Welcome back to Fast Track Entertainment Network, the official radio voice of Cars 2013, and those watching on Fast Track Video Update. I'm Wesley Outland, and this man needs no introduction. He has done it all in the world of motorsports. The former general manager and track operator of the Charlotte Motor Speedway, the mile-and-a-half mecca of motorsports nestled up the road in Concord. And I think it's safe enough to just say, bottom line, there's a quote on the website, and it point blank says, Charlotte has had everything racing except a trade show, and it was your words. Not anymore. It's finally here. Humpy Wheeler, welcome to Cars, sir.
Well, thanks. And you know, I knew when the show was at Hickory and it sold out 2 years, I said, we've got to move this thing to a bigger venue. And so here we are in Charlotte.
Absolutely. Now, what I would like to talk about, and I really wanted to get a one-on-one with you about this, and I know we had talked at Carolina Speedway back in October, the Speedway Benefits Program and how it is going to benefit short track racing and local drivers, teams, promoters, and regional super late model, dirt racing, asphalt racing. Talk about Speedway benefits to our listeners.
Well, it's totally geared to short tracks. There's 1,500 of them in the United States, and what we're going to do, what we're doing is we're combining them together into a collective so that we can go to a major soft drink company, snack company, whatever it is, and sell a sponsorship for all the tracks en masse, something they just can't do today.
Right.
And then divvy the money out to the tracks, a lot more than they can get, for instance, going to the local bottler or whatever it is. And the other thing we're doing is we're putting them into a collective where we're buying stuff from them for them. Most tracks buy the same things every week, and we already shown we can save them about 300% on their buying by going straight to the manufacturer and buying for all those tracks together. Just toilet paper alone is going to
have a
save
lot
them
of
a
Charmin.
minute. You got to have a lot
certain.
of that. That's right. So that's the and the other thing we're doing, obviously, is we want them to be successful. And what we're trying to do is make sure that they get as many people in the grandstand as they can. So we're going to be working with them. We're not a sanctioned body, but we are going to be working with them for rules so we can get more expensive race cars, and that'll bring more drivers to the track, and that will bring more people to the track. And I think Carolina Speedway in Gastonia, where you are, I think that's a prime example of how to race. A lot of cars, a lot of action, and it's filled up every Friday night.
Definitely. We're talking with Humpy Wheeler, and of course you can go to SpeedwayBenefits.com. SpeedwayBenefits.com online. They're also on Facebook and Twitter. And check out your YouTube video channel. Man, some awesome videos. And you tell it like it is, Humpy.
Yeah, the Humpy show on YouTube's got quite a bit of reaction because I do tell it like it is. I talk about the problems NASCAR's got with attendance, what I think should be done about it. I talk about short tracks and what I think needs to be done there. And sometimes it gets controversial, but somebody's got to tell it like it is.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough now, I don't care. I just say, hey, this is what I think, and take it or leave it.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, he has been behind cars with Jimmy Schultz and Kate Dillon and Clint Elkins, and the entire car show started off as the Carolina Auto Racing Show. Now it's the Charlotte Auto Racing Show. Like you said, it's about time that something like this came to this area.
Well, you know, we're sitting here right next to the NASCAR Hall of Fame in the Charlotte Convention Center, and within 75 miles, there's 300 racing operations, including Cup, Nationwide, Truck, late models, Indy cars, karting, etc. And that's interesting because when I was doing research years ago, you know, this was once a gold mining center.
Yeah.
Until it ran out in the 1840s. There were 300 gold mines within the same distance.
Wow.
So I think the gold mines have gone, but the race place there. And we didn't have anything like this in Charlotte. And I knew when the guys started it up at Hickory, and I went up there the first time, and man, they were bulging at the seams. And then the second, I said, you guys have got to move it to a bigger venue because you're going to blow the walls out.
Absolutely. Humpy, why is it that NASCAR is struggling the way that they are? Why is it that, you know, short track racing is starting to be on the uprise? Like you said, there's if you go to the website speedwaybenefits.com and you look at the diagram video, flooding the masses is 50 billion people for local short track racing, dirt, asphalt, what have you, drag racing, because you cover it all. Why is it that NASCAR is just not getting it?
Well, I think, for one thing, NASCAR, you know, had a tremendous growth spurt. It went 10 to 12 years, 15% growth a year, and you can't sustain that. So sports, all of them, NFL, baseball, etc., they all go through that to become a national sport, and they go into kind of a plateau. And, you know, if you're like hockey, you went down the cliff.
Right, absolutely.
But, you know,
then the strike came.
Right, the strike came in baseball, and they took steroids, and they weighed 280 pounds, and they're knocking the ball 900 feet. People got back into it. But what we need right now is a rejuvenation with NASCAR. We're doing the same things we've been doing. Even though NASCAR has they made a lot of good changes like green, white, checker finish and you know, 2 wide restarts and things like that help. But I think the next phase.
But you did that at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the Summer Shootout Series.
Yeah, but we're the ones that really pushed NASCAR to do those things, and fortunately they did. I think the next thing that we got to do is forget these 500 and 600 mile races. Now I promoted 34, 600, 35. And here I'm calling the kid will call him
calling the pet Cottle Black. Yeah.
But this is a different time and a different age. And I think today, if we were doing this thing again, and we should be doing this, is we probably on Sunday afternoon or Saturday night run 4 heat races, maybe 15 laps apiece, run a B main for the last 24 cars, and then the B main might be 150 miles. Then the main event would be 200 miles. You still got 3.5 hours of racing.
Absolutely.
But it's in segments.
And you got people to stay.
You got people to stay. And you don't have this drone effect that you get in a 500-mile race from about 200 to 400. At 400, people start thinking about racing again. I think if we eliminate that, we'll get back to where we need to go, and it'll rejuvenate racing. Because it's changed. The future of our business is a 12-year-old boy. And I'm not saying girls don't do it, but the boys are going to take the girls down the road to the track. 12-year-old boys today are the most entertained human beings in the history of civilization. They're playing video games that cost $50 million to produce. They're going to Pixar movies like Cars or Planes. They cost $150 to $200 million to produce.
Yeah.
We're showing them at the racetrack. We better be as good as Disney, Pixar, all the rest of those people. And if we're not, we need to change, and we do need to change now.
Absolutely. It is Fast Track Entertainment Network and, of course, the voice of the official radio voice of Cars, the Charlotte Auto Racing Show. He is Humpy Wheeler, and he needs no introduction. The man, I mean, you've done it for so long, and so many stories. Tell everybody the one about the Battle of Grenada. I know we kind of dabbed on that at Hickory and scaring NASCAR and blowing the bombs off. Talk about that real quick.
Well, you know, I went down to Fort Bragg and met with the general down there, the 82nd Airborne. I said, you guys, you know, you have maneuvers that you got to do certain times a year. And I said, why don't you just do one at the Speedway? You got to do them anyway. And I said, if you do that, we'll make a recruiting deal for you, because what better place to go recruiting than a grandstand of a NASCAR race? So he said, hey, that's not a bad idea. So total secrecy, they came up there and staged the invasion of the Speedway. And so when we had it, NASCAR didn't know it was coming. Nobody at the Speedway, except a few people, knew it was going to happen. And all of a sudden, you know, 45 minutes before the race starts, here comes these Chinook helicopters accompanied by, accompanied by these Apache machine gun helicopters. That's all an Apache is, machine gun in the air. And here they come from behind the speedway, behind the grandstand. People are, good Lord, what's going on? All these choppers coming in there, you know. And then they get over the grass area, and the guys from the airborne rappel out of those on ropes. And then they bring the 105 howitzers down there and set them up. Of course, we had a couple of houses to blow up, you know.
Yeah.
And they started firing up there to the suites, and it was rattling those things. And people, my, what's going on here? It was an invasion. It cost me a horse that day. This guy calls me Monday, and he says, you killed my horse. I said, I did. When did I do that? I don't remember that. He said, that first bomb that went off, I was riding my horse over there, and he tripped, and I broke his leg, and I had to shoot him. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, I hope this ain't a thoroughbred. So I said, what kind of horse was it? He says, a Paso Fino. I said, all right. I called Dick Hutcherson, who raised them.
Yeah.
I said, what did one of them cost? He said, $1,500. So I called the guy back up, and I said, I got a Paso Fino coming over there for you. I said, it's 3 years old. It's been gelded, and it's the same color as one you got, because they're all about the same color.
Right, right.
Oh, you do that for me? I said, bet. And I took it over there to him, and I said, next time, don't ride that horse that morning. You know, and I never had another
Which
problem
means there was
with
a lot more bombings to come.
A lot more bombings came, yeah, just the start of it.
So, but NASCAR was telling you to stop this, don't be doing it. You're like, I'm not.
Well,
stopping.
no, they can. What is going on here? We'll never get the race started. I said, don't worry about it. We're gonna be finished. We've already rehearsed this. It's gonna be done. And they got pale as death warmed over, you know. And I said, just go eat lunch, and when you get through eating lunch, it'll all be over. My gosh, you know, we're supposed one of those choppers lands on the car. I said, well, it does. We get another one out of the trailer, you know, whatever. You know, they just went nuts. Finally, they got used to it, the Humpy stuff, and they just kind of, you know, particularly when we brought the elephants in, and they started dropping big bombs, you know. And of course, hey, what are you going to do about that? It's messing the whole track up. Man, it'll make a great race.
Absolutely.
And, you know.
What is it? Is there somebody out there that needs to be the next promoter like you or Humpy Wheeler to
Oh, we need, you know, we need
to
10
do
or
the
12
things you
of
came
them.
up with?
We've got to, because that's what's going to change the thing. We got to get people back in the grandstand. We got to be friendly to them. The main thing we got to do is we got to put the twang back in NASCAR.
There you go.
And we lost that for a while. I remember this guy called me. He was a sponsor, a big sponsor. And he's not one of our sponsors at the track, but NASCAR guy. That sponsor, not a NASCAR person. He said, you know, you need to put some class in that national anthem. You need to get Maria Callas or Pavarotti or somebody to sing it. Now, if I got Pavarotti, I'd done it, but because it'd been, you know, talk about it. As soon as he got on the phone, off the phone, I said, he's what's wrong with racing. I called George Jones's agent, and I said, get George down here to sing national anthem. George is, I booked him, God rest his soul, I booked him 9 times. He's always shown up on time, he's always been sober, etc. George shows up. The national anthem. George, how much twang you got left? He said, that's all I got left. And he sang that national anthem, and he put the twang in it. And when he got through, those people went crazy. That's what they want. You can't change things. It's the people in the grandstands, the backhoe operator, the truck driver, and all these people. We're not fancy people in the grandstand. They're just plain old everyday people, you know. And that's people I grew up with, people I hang out with. And you can't change that. And too many people
can't change who you are.
Too many people have tried to change NASCAR. It's not NASCAR as much as it is some of the sponsors.
Right.
Let those guys go and let them be themselves.
What do you think of fast track racing, Humpy? You've had them at the dirt track before. What do you think of the fast track racing series?
I think it's great. I think that it's a good venue for a young driver to move up in. I think it's a good venue for an old journeyman driver to stay in. And
like David Smith.
David Smith. And give him something to do. And it's fairly inexpensive. I'd like to get the cost down a little bit more, and that's something we're going to be working with. I've been talking to a lot of people today about that, chassis builders and body builders and engine guys and stuff like that. And I think we're going to be able to help these tracks by giving them some advice on some things they can do to put more people on the grandstand. I was in Bangor, Maine 2 summers ago. I run a boat up there for a guy, a friend of mine. And I picked the paper up, and they're talking about the race at the Bangor Speedway on Wednesday night. I said,
Bangor, Maine Speedway.
I said, wait a minute. This is Maine? I said, there's no fish left up here. The logs all been cut. What do these people do for a living? And one guy said, what do they do for a living? He says, they breathe. I said, that's good. At any rate, I go over there. Not supposed to run on Wednesday night, right? I go over there on Wednesday night. The place is packed. I just got 1,200 seats, but that's good. Over 100 race cars.
Wow.
And at 10:15, it was over. It was a great show because his late model division is what we would call the renegades.
Gotcha.
Metric chassis cars with junkyard motors in them.
Wow.
And he had about 36 of them. It's cheap racing. And, his back gate, he made enough money on a back gate to pay all the expenses. So whoever walked in the front was profit. Bangor, Maine. So he's telling us something. He's telling us that we got to change the way we're doing things. And it's like FASTRAK, getting these cars down, less expensive. That's a tremendous advantage. And I've been looking at some of these motors that people have got here that I'm really encouraged that they can. I know use that one engine in this FASTRAK.
The Chevy 604.
Yeah. 604. You can run all season with it.
Yes.
And next thing we got to tackle is the tires. Get those tires down to where they're less expensive. I took a cup car, and we took it over to the dirt track. We put, this has got a full cup engine, more horsepower than it ever was.
Right.
Put street radial tires, 66, like you run on the highway. That thing was unbelievable. All of a sudden, it was back old-time racing. That car was going sideways through the corner. Jeff Gordon came over and wanted to run it. I let him. He said, "You're the worst tires I ever been in." I said, "You're just spoiled rotten." I said, "You just want to tire it." You go over, and then Schrader came over, and he didn't say, he's gonna go. And before you know, with that crate motor in it and those cheap tires for highways, they were running within a second of the late models. So those are the kind of things we got to work on to do and get this thing down to more less expensive for the average driver.
Final question in closing, because I know you're a busy man. And we're talking to Humpy Wheeler again with Speedway Benefits. You can go to speedwaybenefits.com to see all the stuff that he is doing to try to bring grassroots racing back to a national stature, and I believe it can really take place. It's like I told somebody whenever I saw the news break about it, if there's one man that I think can be able to save grassroots racing, it's got to be Humpy Wheeler.
Well, I hope.
Because you've done it before.
And I hope I'll be able to make some impact with it. I know it's going to be controversial because everybody's got their niche. People want to change this, they want to change that. But the fact is, we have got to change.
Do we need to go back to the way things that you used to do it? Back in the old days?
I went back and I spent 2 days doing this. I got all the old racing movies I could find. Old Dick Wallen movies from Ascot and Terre Haute, Indiana, and DeCoin, Illinois, and places like that. I even got some vintage films that people had given me of racing back in Pennsylvania on the dirt tracks back in the 50s and 60s. And I began to notice a pattern. There was a lot of lead passing, and they were sideways in the corner, really sideways, not only on dirt, on asphalt. So I was watching one race from Ascot, fine little track, no longer in existence in Southern California, and the great driver, Parnelli Jones, was racing Roger McCluskey, another great, down there in the sprint car, and they were just absolutely going back and forth. So I picked up the phone and called Parnelli, who I know well. I just watched you at Ascot back in 1957. I want you to tell him. He said, well, you ought to know about that. He says, the reason we were sideways in the corner is you worked for Firestone for 9 years, and I worked with them at Indy. And I said, those tires were only 8 inches wide versus these galoops we put on the right rear now.
Exactly, yes.
And that's what got the car sideways in the corner, made it easier to pass and all those kind of things. So sometimes in racing you can go backwards and make great forward progress.
Absolutely, definitely. Humpy Wheeler, thank you so much.
Thanks
Give
a
out
lot.
your contact info for Speedway Benefits if anybody's interested, if somebody's
Okay,
watching and
yeah.
they want to.
Yeah, speedwaybenefits.com. That's all you got to do.
SpeedwayBenefits.com. And of course, this is Humpy Wheeler, and we appreciate him being on the program. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more great guests here on Fast Track Entertainment Network, the official radio voice of cars in 2013.